Grit is in you. It's in your passion, your perseverance. It's in every challenge you face and overcome. Grit is in you. It's never in Rockin' Protein. Never settle.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Thank you all for joining us for another episode of Behind the Mic, powered by the Revolt Podcast Network. I'm your host, Wise Brissett, RPN Community Manager and Podcast Enthusiast. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, formerly known as X, y'all know how I do, at The Real Wise, that's W-I-Z-E. Now, I have one last ask. This is the last episode of the season, so my final ask, subscribe to Behind the Mic, wherever you listen to your podcast, give us a 5-star rating. That's what we always do. Cool, so I rambled for a little bit. As we close out this month of June, we are closing out an incredible month, which featured things like Black Music Month, Pride Month, Caribbean Heritage Month, and Men's Health, amongst many, many more. But we're also closing this season out too. So I'll save all of my thank you, my law for a little bit later. But I do want to end the season with a very special guest. And I'm gonna tell y'all something. My guy don't play with me. So it's happening right here, right now. Our guest today is leading two of the most important platforms in Black media right now. Like, you may know him as the CEO of Revolt. You may have heard that he's also the CEO of Offscript Worldwide. Join me, y'all, in welcoming our final guest of the season, Detavio Samuels. Thanks for joining us.
Peace, King. What's good, man? How you feeling?
Man, I am feeling good. I just read a whole lot. So, a lot of energy, a lot of feelings going on right now. Like, transparently, this is very exciting for me. So I'm just going to share that with the audience, share that with you. We're just going to start right here.
All right. I love it. Let's get it.
All right. So, Detavio, before we get into a whole lot of things we have to talk about, let's do some real quick high-level stuff. Where are you from, and what's a cool story from your childhood that you want to share with us today?
All right. Well, where I'm from is easy. I was originally born in Boulder, Colorado. My father was a professor at CU Boulder. He got a new job at Prairie View A&M. And so we went to Houston. I did a short stint there. That's when my parents split up. And so I ended up back in Colorado. And so essentially I grew up and was raised in Denver, Colorado. That's hometown for me. That's the home turf. In terms of a childhood story, you know what I'll say? One of the things that comes to me in terms of when I think about my childhood and lessons that I learned is that growing up, from kindergarten through 6th grade, I was in a part of the town that was not the nicest, the easiest. It's what most people would think about when you think about kind of like stereotypical Black growing up, surrounded by a lot of people who are struggling, not a lot of money, etc. And I always was good at school, whatever that means, right? School always came relatively easy for me. But I watched myself 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. I'm blowing school out. I actually skipped a grade in kindergarten. So young and achieving very well, went to gifted and talented in 4th, 5th grade. But the note that I want to make is around 5th grade, 6th grade, that's when my behavior starts changing, right? That's when I start getting into things that are not healthy for me. That's, I'm running around the streets fighting, I'm stealing, I'm doing whatever these things are. And so my mom sees all of that when I had a run-in with some Crips, and she made a big decision to take me and move me to the suburbs. And so I spent the end of my middle school years and the end of my high school years in the suburbs. There was no pressure. There were no gangs. There was no fighting. There was none of that stuff was going on. And so I quickly returned back to being like that A student who was super focused on their books. And the lesson that it taught me was that how important your environment is to who you become, right? The same kid in one environment, I was about to go down a very different path. And all my mom had to do was shift my surroundings, shift who I was around. And I know that's not an easy thing for most people to do. But in doing that, she shifted the trajectory of my life, right? And so learned from a very, very, very early age that It's not always just about who you are, what you're born with, your neighborhood, the people around you, the things that nurture you play a massive role in forming and who you become.
First off, shout out to your mom for making that sacrifice.
For sure. Shout out to moms. Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
I have a 13-year-old and I've been explaining to her pretty much the same thing. Like, you know, like your network is really important, and the people that you are around and you want to like be in your circle, like they have to add value to that. So that's incredible for her to like, you know, show you that example as a kid. And I'm obviously it's gotten you a long way.
Yeah. Your circle, I think, you know, whether there's 100 different analogies and language that people will use that basically say, show me your circle and I'll show you where you're going to go, right? I'll show you who you will become. And so because she moved me to the suburbs, I ended up going to schools like Duke, and I've gone to schools like Stanford, right? And so my circle then exposed me to things that my mother and my father could never even expose me to, right? And all of those things lay the groundwork for who I ultimately become. So yeah, man, environment is important. Circle is important. I think all too often we underestimate those things.
For sure. All right. So thank you for sharing that information. You know,
of course.
Let's talk about some tunes real quick. So we got a playlist on Spotify. It's called B-Sides Track of the Week, where you can find all of our guests' favorite songs anytime. So B-side tracks to me are really songs that, like, you know, they're not really all that popular. You're not going to hear them on the radio, but they're just as good or even better than A-side tracks. So what B-side track do you want to share with us today?
Yeah, man, my truth is that most of the time, I would probably argue 90% of the time, the music that I'm listening to is gospel related. At this stage in my life, I fundamentally believe that music are spells, right? These are the things that we continuously repeat and say over and speak over our lives. And so the music that I want to speak over my life, the spells that I want to cast over my life, have to do with those things that say that there's nothing that I can't do, that with my God, everything is possible, right? That's what I tend to feed myself. But if we're not going in the gospel lane, one of the artists who's been around for a while that I recently discovered that I quite love is Cleo Sol. And she's got a song, There Will Be No Crying, that I've kind of jammed most nights as I'm getting ready for bed.
Thank you for that. I'm not going to lie. I really do feel like every time you speak, is whether it's town halls or even now, like you speak with like a sense of empowerment, even through that song. Like now I'm like, you know what? It is a spell. And I do need to try and go and listen to some gospel music for a little while and add that to my playlist. So it is on the playlist, y'all. We do have some other podcasters who did submit faith-based songs as well too. So yes, tap in with the playlist. It's exclusively on Spotify. Just search B-Side Track of the Week. Thanks for that, Detavio. I appreciate you.
Of course, brother. Appreciate you, King.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
Have you ever spotted McDonald's hot, crispy fries right as they're being scooped into the carton? And time just stands still. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
All right, so now we know a little bit about you in front of the mic, but let's talk about the person behind the mic. So I would say that the common denominator amongst like most CEO candidates at minimum is like leadership. So like when in your life did you recognize that you had like the passion, but also like the temperament for leadership?
Yeah, I actually think, look, I've been a leader my entire life, whether you're talking about sports or school or college or fraternity. I've always been in a leadership position. So, one could argue I've been training my entire life. But I think when leadership becomes super important to me as a skill set and a capability is back in 2004, I went to Stanford Business School. I went very young. Average person going to business school typically goes at 26, 27. I think I went at 22. So I was much younger than everybody. And when you go to a school like Stanford, your classmates are the best of the best. They're the cream of the crop. These are people who have been, some of my classmates had already made millions building and selling there. I literally had classmates that came to school to find classmates to invest in because they were already millionaires, right? You're dealing with people who are the best of the best investment bankers, management consultants. And the first 6 months of business school is very heavy as it relates to like finance and stats and mathematics, it's very quantitatively heavy. And so if you didn't come from that type of a background, those people tend to struggle. And so while again, typically been pretty good at school, I didn't take any math in college. Once I got to choose what I was taking, I was like, get me out of this math stuff, right? And so in those first 6 months of school at Stanford, it felt like they were telling me that in order to be good at business, you had to be elite at math. And so by the end of the first 6 months, what I was saying to myself was, well, I've seen what the top 1% looks like in math. And maybe I can be top 5, maybe top 10, but I'm probably never going to be top 1. So what is it that I'm going to do that's going to allow me to thrive in the world of business? And that's where I locked in on this idea of leadership. This notion that if I could develop a skill set and the capability of leading, not only would I be able to lead anyone, regardless of age, regardless of background, where they came from, I could lead any business in any category. I could go lead a railroad company. I could go lead a media company. And so for me, a key piece of my strategy became focus on building this leadership skill set, because if you build that, you can do anything and lead anyone. And I would say, honestly, looking back on it, it's probably one of the best decisions that I've made in terms of my professional career.
Yeah, just leaning into your strengths, man. That's
exactly it.
That's a gem right there.
That's exactly it. It's like, I wrote a book back in, maybe it's 2013, and there's a chapter in there that's called Screw Weaknesses. And the whole idea is the world is often trying to tell us to fix our weaknesses, right? When you're in school, people don't often celebrate you for the places where you're getting A's and B's. What people are doing is telling you to go fix the places where you're getting C's, right? And there's this notion that like nobody in the world, no investor invests in your weaknesses, they invest in mastery. No employer invests in your weaknesses, they invest in mastery, right? Everyone wants to know what you're best in the world at. And I think about it, one of my favorite analogies is I think about like basketball, right? You think about Shaquille O'Neal. You want Shaquille O'Neal practicing, dunking around the rim, you know what I mean, doing what he does down low, or do you want him out trying to figure out how to hit better threes? And so I think the only places where we should really be focused on our weaknesses are when your weaknesses get in the way of you being great. So again, you take something like Shaquille O'Neal, 3-pointers don't get in the way of him being great. But what does get in the way of him being great is shooting free throws, right? So how many games did his teams lose because they knew when it came to the end, just foul Shaq, he's send him to the line, he's not going to make anything, right? Yeah. And so my whole thing is if it doesn't get in the way, like screw it, it's not something you should be focused on. What you should be focusing on is how you become better and better at the things that you can be best in the world at.
No, I agree with that 1,000%. Over the last decade, I've had the pleasure of teaching kids and young adults about podcasting. And it's really rooted in the belief that people need to see other people in a role to then see themselves in that role. So I learned that in your career, you work with some Black media pioneers and icons like Cathy Hughes and Alfred Liggins and Don Coleman and countless others that I don't know, but you are more familiar with. Can you talk about like what, how those experiences led you to be here today and like a share moment that you love from any of them?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those Black leaders. Those Black leaders, they trusted a young man to do what a lot of other people would not have trusted me to do. I'll give you a couple of examples. So right out of business school, I go to Johnson & Johnson. I'm doing global marketing there. I have a phenomenal first year, traveling the world, performing on all levels. The next year of MBAs, the year below me that come in, they were all making more money than me. And so I went to my boss to say, look, man, like I'm out here performing, I'm doing my thing. Can I get a promotion or at least can I get a raise so that the people who are paying under me are not making more money than me? For him, it was a no-brainer. He went in to talk to the Total Management Council when he came out. He was like, no raise, no promotion. And he was like, and they were basically saying there were things that I needed to fix or improve in order to get that level up. But he, and I owe him everything, said to me, but I won't even tell you what those things are, because I know that if I tell you to go fix this thing, it's going to break what makes you great. Because he knew a truth, which is that our greatest strengths give birth to our greatest weaknesses. And what he was recognizing is that they were picking on weaknesses that were on the other side of the spectrum of what the actual gift was. And that moment taught me, one, it was time for me to go, right? Like if I'm in a place where who I am naturally and the way that I show up is not going to get me a win or be promoted, then it's time for me to leave. And so I go to Global Hue to work for Don Coleman, right? This is in 2007. Okay, so by the summer of 2008, I don't even think I'd been there a year. Don Coleman promotes me not one level. I came in as what was called a management supervisor. The next level would have been director. The level above that was a group account director. That summer, probably 9-10 months after I got in there, and I had performed. I came in to run the U.S. Navy account. In 6 months, I tripled the business. The client was happy, right? Like we were winning. So by that summer, Don Coleman didn't just promote me one level. He promoted me 2 levels. He promoted a group of account soups to directors, and then he double promoted me to be the group account director over all of them, right? Compare and contrast that to the world where I was at Johnson & Johnson, right? At Global Hue, I was promoted every year for maybe 6-7 years straight. Right? I was a president by the time I was 30 years old. By the time I left Global Hue, I was running both the Detroit office and the New York office, and I was in my young 30s, right? Nobody was going to give me that chance. The same story is true if you talk about Cathy Hughes and Alfred Liggins, right? Never ran a media company, couldn't read a media plan if you asked me to, but they brought me in as the president of their cross-platform marketing and sales media group, right? Within, I think, a year, maybe a year and a half of being there, and again, I performed. They gave me the digital business to run. I knew nothing about digital. I never touched digital. One day I was adjacent to it because I was selling it, but I didn't really know how to run a digital media company.
Yeah.
Yet these people put me in position to be the president and run it, right? And so I owe my entire career to these incredible Black leaders who consistently looked at someone who the world would have said, no, you need to spend 5 years doing this first before we're going to give you the shot. And they gave me the shot and they trusted me to win. And, thank God I delivered for each and every single one of them, but I owe them everything because I really do believe they gave me shots that nobody else would have ever given me.
Definitely shout out to them, man. For those that are not familiar, go and do your Googles. Go do your Googles. So you have a podcast on the network. I love talking about podcasts if you haven't noticed. But the podcast is called The Blackprint. Can you talk about why was it important for you to create a podcast?
Yeah, the Blackprint has been through a really interesting evolution over the last few seasons. I think in the beginning when I set out to do the podcast, which actually, I've told this story many times, there wasn't a desire of mine. I never wanted to be in front of the camera. It's not something I wanted to do. It was something I was urged to do, pushed to do. As I was thinking about what can I contribute to this space, the beginning idea was almost like an anthology of the stories of Black people who had built really amazing things. Right. So I'm talking to Angie from the Shade Room, who built the social layer for Black culture. I'm talking to D Nice, who built Club Quarantine and had everybody moving and jamming and escaping whatever was going on during COVID. Right. What I was really trying to do in the very beginning was almost this verbal autobiography of these great people who were disruptors and innovators in the Black space. So that's where the Blackprint started. This season, I'm so excited about it. But things have started to evolve. So there's still this piece of documenting their life and who they were and how they got to be who they were. But instead of it being almost like the original versions pre-season 4 were almost like resumes, right? How did you get here? What was your path? Now it's almost like a resume of their soul. How did you become who you became? We're going to talk about, yes, you built this company, but how did you become this leader? What were the pivotal moments in your life that made you who you are? And then once we get that down, we jump into 2 pieces that are new that I love, which is there's always this space of mastery. So this season, for example, you have Lena Waithe. If I got Lena Waithe, I want to understand. She's talking to me about the rules that she has when characters in her room and the tension that always has to be created. How can you extract teachable moments for the audience, those people who want to sit in their seats so they can learn? So there's always these teachable moments or mastery components to it in this season that I'm loving. And then the other thing is just really trying to get and crystallize their point of view on the world, right? Given you become who you've become, given you've mastered what you've mastered, how do you see the world? Because I believe if we can share that perspective with the audience, you can help the audience start to see the world a little bit differently. And when you see the world differently, you start to make different decisions. And so this season is much more of a, how did you become who you became? The story of their becoming. What is it that you have mastery over that you can inform and teach the audience? And then what is your point of view on the world so that you can inspire us or challenge us to think differently? That I love. And it feels like a very differentiated space. We just wrapped the season, same as you, I think maybe last week. And I'm so sad, bro. Like I feel like we found like a sweet spot. We know who are the right type of talent to sit across from me. And I honestly can't wait to get back in the chair. So if you say from the day one of season one, it was like, I didn't want to be there. If you talk to me today, I'm like, oh no, I'm excited. I actually think we're building something quite special.
That's incredible. Cause I do love to know like what someone thought about podcasts beforehand and then like where they are now. And it really does seem like you've embraced like the medium and even potentially the conversation that you have with these people. Cause like people don't realize that you really get to talk to people in a way that they bring down all like a good amount of like their shields. And they're like, oh, well, we here talking.
That's right. No, and for the Blackprint, for me, it's almost like if I don't get those moments, if I don't get those vulnerable moments, if I don't get that glimpse into their soul, then I feel like the episode missed, right? And so I'm actually sitting down to get exactly what you just described, right? So yeah, it's been a journey. And I was hesitant in the beginning because there's billions of pieces of new content put up every day, right? Yeah. So what's going to make yours different? What's going to make yours special? You and I, we're in this game every single day. I think the hardest thing about content today is just this idea of discovery and breaking through. I think there's tons of amazing content that dies, not because it's not good, but because the world never discovered it. Right. And so for me, it was trying to figure out, okay, if I'm going to be one of the billion posting today, how can I make sure that what I'm building, once people find it, is truly unique and distinct and doesn't exist? And man, I feel like we're there.
You know what? I think we're there too. You're leading into my next statement. So back in April, we unveiled this incredible new platform, Offscript Worldwide. Beautiful, powerful, new ecosystem really built to nurture the entire creative community and potentially even like their full journey. So like in your words, like what's the unique value that Offscript brings to the community and like how do you see it complementing the work of Revolt?
Yeah, what the world didn't see is that while we were building Revolt and doing the amazing work we were doing for that brand, we were also building an entire ecosystem, right? And the goal was, and then we're finally here to shift from being a media company that is powered by creators to being a creator holding company that is powered by the most incredible media engine, right? And so when you think about it, when you compare what we've been doing and how we work with creators versus anybody else, you look at other media brands like, look, BET had a phenomenal run this last Sunday on the BET Awards. They tapped into the dopest people from the culture, Kai, Sanaa, Drewski, but that relationship is a one-off. It's transactional. They did that episode and they're gone, right? We'll see if we ever see them on BET again, right? When you think about talent agencies that work with creators, they, help them broker deals, but they don't have a media platform to amplify them or build them up. They're not, blessed with the production skill set and capabilities to help them build their own content IP, right? And so you can just look at all of these different people that play with creators, but they're transactional. Everybody is renting them or borrowing their attention. Conversely, when you look at Revolt, we're not doing that at all. Like we're building businesses with them. We're building content IP with them, things that will last and stand the test of time, right? So whether you're looking at the show we have with Lene, or whether you're looking at something like Drink Champs, which has been on Revolt for probably almost 10 years, this is content IP that will stand the test of time. And so now what we're saying with Offscript is we are the holding company for the creators that shape culture. We are the place where they go, not just to have shows, not just to be talent, but where they go to build businesses and where they go to build empires, because we have the only ecosystem that can help them go from who they are, creator, to creator with content and IP, to full media distribution and amplification, to then also being monetized by brands and products we run through our ecosystem. Nobody has that. We've literally built the operating system for the culture. And so now what it's about is letting the world know that that's who we are, letting creators know that we're open for business. And yes, we still have things like Revolt, which is literally a creator-led media platform, right? It is our flagship brand. It is our baby. There is no change to that mission or that assignment. But now we want to tell creators we want to work with them in different ways. And not only can we push them through Revolt, we have a ton of other brands and a ton of other places where we can help them build the media empires that they dream of.
Man, listen, I saw it and I was ready for it. And I heard us talk about it in the town hall, and I can't wait for everyone else to get that experience as well too. So one more question before we go to break. I heard on the Social Proof podcast with David Shands that you're also a Ben & Jerry's board member. Now, I know them for being staunch protectors of culture and community. So can you say a few words, whatever comes to mind about that?
Yeah. Look, I think Ben & Jerry's is an incredibly special brand. I don't know how these two incredible white dudes figured it out, decades ago, but this idea that you could actually use corporations, companies to do good in the world, that they didn't exist just to make money or profit. And they definitely didn't exist just to make one or two people profitable, right? That they could literally create and make change in the world. Ben & Jerry's, key thing is we use ice cream to change the world. And so I'm in love with this brand. I'm in love with what they built. And for me, I see it as the future of what corporate America will be. I'm excited about this new generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, because I think the more that they get into power, the more this idea of we're going to take companies that are not just capitalistic, but that are companies that can build and shape the world is going to be something that's more prevalent. And so I'm honored to sit on the board of Ben & Jerry's. I get to see from the inside exactly how it's done. And I will tell you that there's so many ideas that, yes, I get to contribute and help govern this really incredible brand. And I also get to learn a lot from the inside. And so there's so many things that I see happen on Ben & Jerry's, ideas that I can then bring to Revolt. I'll give you one example and then stop so I'm not rambling forever. But you've heard me talk about this notion of linked prosperity and shared adversity, something I've always believed in, but Ben & Jerry's gave me the language, right? Linked prosperity. When we win, everybody wins. When Ben & Jerry wins, everybody wins, right? That's why at Offscript you have the employees who are the largest shareholders, right? That's why you've had years where when business was doing well, employees got bonuses that were bigger than, most people would have ever expected. This idea that we will be prosperous together. But then also making sure that people know that in tough times, business isn't always going to be good, right? When you're building a business, they say it takes 10 years to build a business. You're not going to have 10 good years. You're going to have some tough years that you're going to have to weather, right? And when it gets to those moments, we expect and we need everybody to have shared adversity, right? And so that language that Ben & Jerry's has given me that helps you build it and crystallize it in the brands that you're building, or the companies that you're building. It's those types of things that I'm eternally grateful for. So I get to give a lot to Ben & Jerry's, but, for me, I'm grateful that Ben & Jerry's gives a lot to me.
Man, I almost want to call you an overachiever. Like, you are just doing the thing, man. Like, you're really doing it. So, okay. On the other side of this break, we're kicking it into overdrive with a rapid fire game of overrated or underrated right after this.
My favorite thing about Shipt since I signed up for Target Circle 360? No price markups when I order same-day delivery from tons of local stores. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. I won't lie, I've had too much fun being like, markups on groceries? Not in my fridge. Markups on pet food? Not for my DOG. Markups on tools, electronics, home goods, meds? Not in my house. Anyway, it's awesome. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Choice Hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Like with the road trippers we see here in their natural habitat, the breakfast area at a Comfort Inn. Here's a dad teaching his son how to make waffles, fluffy golden waffles. There's a mom making sure her daughter eats some fruit to avoid the "I'm hungry" from the back seat. And a sibling standoff over the last muffin. This is the cycle of vacation maximizationing in all its glory. Check into more. Book direct to choicehotels.com.
And we're back, y'all. Thanks for sticking around. Now we're kicking it into overdrive with a rapid fire round of overrated or underrated. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Overrated or underrated? Work-life balance.
Overrated, only because I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life harmony.
Overrated or underrated? The creator economy.
Underrated.
Overrated or underrated? Short-form content.
Underrated.
Overrated or underrated? AI and media.
Underrated.
Overrated or underrated? Leading by consensus.
Underrated. I just want to put a pivot in there. I think consensus is super important. hearing all voices is super important. I think the leader still has to determine where they go. Consensus is a good place because if you are a smart person, you have put a whole bunch of people in the room that are smarter than you. And if you get them to consensus, a lot of times that's the right way to go. But at the end of the day, I think the leader still got to make that executive decision.
Mm-hmm. And we're all done. So, Detavio, this has been an amazing episode so far. Before we end, though, like, what's one thing that you want people to know about you that they wouldn't get from listening to your podcast?
What I want people to know about me, look, the most critical thing for people to know about me is that at my core, I personally am a man of God, that is my center, my core, my everything, that everything that I do is rooted in that. And so if you ever hear stories about my character that run counter to that truth, don't believe them. God sits at the center of everything that I do. I am a servant leader. I am people first. I'm not here trying to build a company or a media company just so that I can get rich and build wealthy. I'm out here trying to, I was used to say Revolt is not just a media company. It's an engine for transformative change, right? I am trying to do what I have learned is possible from things like Ben & Jerry's, which is make the world a better place. And so, sometimes on the path of doing that, you're going to mess up. Sometimes you're going to hurt feelings. Sometimes, again, everything's not going to be perfect, but I want people to know my heart. I want people to understand why I'm here and what I'm doing. And again, you hear it. And if you ever see me acting out of character, then you should feel free to hold me accountable as well. But I want people to know who I am at my core.
Man, I hope people realize that I get to hear Detavio on town halls so often that I'm glad I'm able to share like his persona, his experience, his life lessons, all these things with you on this final episode. Detavio, where can they find you on socials, man? Thank you so much for coming again.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. I'll give you my socials first and then I'll close out. My socials, everything is Detavio, literally everything. So on Twitter, which you now say X, Instagram, you call it, you name it, everything is Detavio. So please follow me if you hear this podcast. And then Wise, I just want to say thank you, King. We were talking a little bit earlier and I was saying, because we don't have an office and we're remote, you don't always get to touch everybody in the organization frequently. And so this podcast has been an honor for me because we've gotten to spend time here. And while you've been interviewing me, I still feel like I get to see who you are and your soul. And so proud of the work that you've been doing, proud of the work that you've done. But now even more proud now that I know a little bit more about who you are as a human and who you and your spirit, man. So thank you for giving me the space to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be who I am and my normal self. Thank you for celebrating me and showing me love. And, want to give you a little bit of that back before we check out.
Man, thank you so much. And again, wow.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Shopping is hard.
I can never find anything in my size.
I don't even know my size.
I buy my clothes the same place I buy my groceries.
There's a better way. Make it easy with Stitch Fix. Just share your size, style, budget, and done. Your personal stylist sends pieces picked just for you.
That was easy.
Stitch Fix. Online personal styling for everyone. Free shipping and returns. No subscription required. Get started today at stitchfix.com.
Yeah, audience, it's the end of the season. It's the end of season 1. Thank y'all so much for listening to this final episode of Behind the Mic, Powered by Revolt Podcast Network. Now remember, Behind the Mic in this format is going on break, but we will have Behind the Mic bites where you'll get snippets from different episodes for the next 13 weeks until we come back in September. So as usual, I'm your host, Wise Brissett. You all can find me at The Real Wise on Instagram and Twitter, formerly known as X. I'm internationally known on the microphone as Wiz, Wizzy, and Wise, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Behind the Mic, Powered by Revolt Podcast Network is hosted by me, Wise Brissett. Special thanks to the Indie Creative Network and Storytime Studios for editing and producing this podcast.